Welcome back to Let's Play Pokémon FireRed. We are now at part 12 and today we are tackling the Pokémon Tower. We were there before, but we couldn't really explore it because there were ghosts there and they were spooky and scary and it made our Pokémon scared, so we couldn't fight anything. But then we went to Celadon City, did the rocket hideout, and there we got the Sylph Scope, which can now help us identify those ghosts. Before any of that though, we're gonna stop by this man, Mr. Psychic, and he gives us the TM for the move Psychic, a powerful Psychic type move, which I'm not gonna give to a Pokemon just yet. Also, you might have noticed that this part is a lot shorter than the other ones. That's because the next one is gonna be a lot longer. I'm not looking forward to it, but we're not there just yet. Before any of that, we're gonna have to go back to Lavender Town, everyone's most depressing place in the universe. Even though I do actually like the Lavender Town theme song, as much of a mood swing it is. Not that you're actually gonna hear the song very long, because Lavender Town is actually pretty small. The Pokémon Tower has its own theme song, which is considerably less depressing, even though that's where all the corpses are at. Though I don't think I really explained what's going on here in Lavender Town. You can find out by talking to some of the people, but I never really do that. But I will tell you in a minute, but first, we're gonna switch out a party member. Last part we got a free Pokemon. I chose Hitmonchan and I called him Jackie because Jackie Chan. We're gonna put him on our party and switch out Cannabis apparently. Farewell Cannabis, it was fun, you'll be in the reject box. But now we have no more Cannabis the Gloom, we now have Jackie the Hitmonchan. Anyway, now let's talk Lavender Town. If you talk to the people in the town here, they will tell you that Team Rocket has invaded the Pokémon Tower because they're looking for ghost Pokémon. And apparently in the process they killed a Cubone's mother for some reason, just to show off how evil they are, I guess. Cubone mothers are destined to die anyway. But there's also Mr. Fuji, is sort of an elderly of this town. At least I think so, the game never really tells anything like that, but that's sort of how they treat him. But he went to the top of the Pokémon Tower because there's a restless spirit up there. Sadly, then he got captured by Team Rocket, I think, because I don't know, Team Rocket needs to be evil in some way. But now we're gonna have to go to the top of the tower and rescue Mr. Fuji and kick some Team Rocket members in the face. Why? Because that guy in front of the Sylph Scope building doesn't fall asleep until we do so. I don't know. It is also sort of implied behind the scenes that Mr. Fuji actually used to be from Cinnabar Island, a place we'll be traveling to in part 18. And that he used to be a scientist on a certain project that we also may run into in part 18. In due time, folks, in due time. In the meantime, this is a Ghastly, the first and pretty much only ghost Pokemon in this game, while him and its evolutions, of course. Ghost Pokemon are supposed to counter Psychic types, but he is also part Poison type, so Poison types are weak to Psychic, so that's entirely pointless. We also have Jackie here, who has a few moves that we haven't seen before. Going down the list, starting with Comet Punch, which is a secutive attack, kinda like Fury Swipe, except this one is a fighting type move. It may hit twice, 3 times, 4 times or 5 times. Next up he has Agility, which raises its speed by 2 stages. Mach Punch, a fighting type move with a priority of +1. And finally a Dark type move, Pursuit, which can hit the Pokemon even when it switches out. Those are Jackie's moves at the moment, though he won't really have them for very long. But just now we also saw another interesting move by the name of Curse. Curse can actually have 2 different effects depending on what Pokemon uses it. If the move is used by a Ghost type Pokemon, it will hurt itself, but it will then lay a curse on the opponent, causing it to get hurt by the end of every turn. So that's another sort of invisible status effect. However, when it's used by a non-Ghost type Pokemon, it will have a completely different effect. It will instead lower the Pokemon's speed, but raise its attack and defense. Kind of a weird move. And in most generations it's classified as a question mark type move, though I think generation 5 and onwards it's classified as a ghost type move. What's also kinda weird is that even when it's used by a non-ghost type Pokemon, when it doesn't need a target, it will still fail if there's not an available target. But that's enough about that move. We found a magic circle here in the middle of the Pokemon Tower, which will heal all of our Pokemon, so we won't have to go back to the Pokemon Center. It's weird, but I'm not complaining. Oh, and the trainer we're fighting right now, she just said, "Give me your all." Though in the original she said, "Give me your blood," but that had to be censored. It is implied that all these ghost channeler Pokemon trainers are actually possessed by their own Pokemon. They also snap out of it once you beat them. Also, new Pokemon, Hunter, the evolution of Ghastly. Evolves from a Ghastly into a Hunter at level 25, so this person is a cheater. And it evolves into a Gengar when you trade it with someone. All of them are still a Ghost Poison type. Gengar gets a Mega Evolution in Generation 6. And this trio of Pokemon is actually some of my favorite Pokemon of all time. I mostly like Ghost Pokemon, and Gengar, Hunter and Ghastly are definitely up there. I'm not gonna use any of them in this generation because I really like my Pokemon to be fully evolved and I didn't want to bother with all the trading Pokemon stuff. So maybe you'll see Gengar in a Generation 2 playthrough perhaps? Though that's not gonna be anytime soon. There are also a few fan theories about Gengar, Hunter and Ghastly. Ghastly, for example, bears a resemblance to a Pokemon by the name of Cloyster, so it's theorized that a Ghastly is actually a deceased Cloyster. Hunter has similar eyes to a Voltorb, and because there's a place very close to the Pokémon Tower where you can catch a bunch of Voltorbs, it is theorized that Voltorb is actually a Pokeball that is possessed by a Hunter. And finally, Gengar looks a lot like the Pokemon Clefable, so it is theorized that Gengar is either a deceased Clefable, or that Gengar is sort of the shadow of a Clefable. And finally, I also saw a theory once where the evolutionary line of Ghastly, Hunter, Gengar is supposed to be a ghost forcing itself into this dimension or something because it slowly grows limbs. Anyway, a ghost! Which is a Marowak, which is not a ghost type, but whatever. We just saw the ghost sprite turning into this thing, which you would have seen if I didn't turn off random battles for this playthrough in every wild encounter, or maybe just the first one. You would see those ghost sprites slowly turn into the normal Ghastly or Hunter. I'm not sure if you can catch a wild Hunter here. But yeah, you cannot identify those ghost Pokemon until you have the Sylph Scope, even though you can fight the random trainers and they won't use the ghost sprite. They will actually just use the ghost Pokemon and you will see them just fine without the Sylph Scope. But whatever, the battle we're in right now is mandatory, by the way. This is why you absolutely need the Sylph Scope, because it will always trigger once you step onto this space. This Pokemon is actually also the deceased Marowak we were talking about earlier, the mother of the Cubone that was killed. Also, this is a Marowak, it's the evolution of Cubone. I don't think I really need to explain this, but just in case. And you can actually catch Cubone here in the Pokémon Tower. You cannot catch this specific Marowak, because it's a spooky, scary ghost. If you try to throw a Pokeball at it, it will just shrug it off. You know what would have been cool? If they made this specific Marowak a ghost type. I mean, you can't catch it anyway, and it is a ghost, so maybe its original sprite where it has like ghost eyes or a purple glowy thing around it. I don't know, they could have done something interesting with this battle other than just make it a random Marowak. Who also happens to be a ghost! Did I ever explain the type matchup of ghost type Pokemon? No, I will do so right now. Ghost type Pokemon are weak to ghost type moves, so they're weak to themselves, okay. And they're weak to dark type moves. They are resistant against bug type moves and poison type moves, and they're completely immune against normal type moves and fighting type moves. As for ghost type attacks, they are super effective against ghost type Pokemon and psychic type Pokemon, and they are not very effective against dark Pokemon, while being completely ineffective against normal type Pokemon. Oh, and as I said before, steel type Pokemon used to be resistant against ghost type attacks, until Generation 6 which just made it normal damage. And finally, like I said, Psychics are weak against Ghost type attacks, but in Generation 1, Psychics were completely immune against Ghost type attacks, so that's quite the jump. But now we have defeated the Marowak and we put its spirit to rest by murdering it again. So now we can move on to the Team Rocket area of the Pokémon Tower. Just like the Nugget Bridge, I'm gonna show off all of the trainers. I treat them sort of as a miniature gauntlet, even though you can go back to heal up anytime you want. Also, I kinda need to show off these battles because this part is already way too short anyway. So I'm just gonna hope they have something interesting I can talk about. The Zubat. Oh boy. That is not a very promising start. Also, why am I using a fighting type against a poison flying type? Two things that are resistant to fighting? Because it's a Zubat. Even though the final evolution of Zubat is one of my favorite Pokemon ever, but still, it's a Zubat. You'll never see it coming because, well, he has no eyes. Ah, poor Zubat. Again, I love your final evolution, except its shiny form, which is fabulous, but I prefer the normal one. Lately, I've been breeding a lot of shinies, or well, breeding a lot to get like one shiny every 10 million eggs. Though it's actually going pretty well so far. I already have a shiny Growlithe, a shiny Litwick, a shiny Beldum, shiny Ralts. I think that's about it as of right now, but I'm breeding for more. Some people even say I have a problem with breeding shinies, but I don't have a problem with breeding shinies. Everyone else has a problem with breeding shinies. I can quit whenever I want. I just don't want to. Leave me alone. Sorry, that's a Zubat. Tend to do that to me, I guess. But now we're getting something better than a Zubat. We're getting the evolution of Zubat, which isn't much better until it evolves again, but that it needs friendship and it needs to be generation 2, or you need the national dex, or I want a Crobat. But let's talk about Golbat. If you're already sick of Zubat, you're in luck, because now we're about to get sick of Golbats everywhere. And I don't mean just this generation, no, they're flying around in caves and being used by evil teams all over the Poké world. In fact, I think Golbat is available in pretty much every single Pokemon game without having to trade or transfer. In fact, I'm pretty sure they would be considered a plague. Ooh, but now something is happening. Jackie leveled up, which means he's gonna learn 3 new moves all in a row now. First off is Thunder Punch, an electric type attack with a 10% chance of inflicting paralysis. So now I have a fighting type with an electric move, that's pretty good. Now he wants to learn Ice Punch, an ice type attack with a 10% chance of freezing the target. Okay, pretty good, I would like that. Now he wants to learn Fire Punch, a fire type attack with a 10% chance of inflicting the burn status on a Pokemon. Go right ahead, because now I have a Pokemon with a fighting type move, an ice type move, an electric type move, and a fire type move, all in one Pokemon, and I love it. People always say you should pick Hitmonlee instead of Hitmonchan, but I like having this little type advantage in one Pokemon for a little while. Again, I'm not gonna use it very long, but because of these 3 moves and the fighting type moves that come with it, I like using it. As opposed to what some people believe, that you should always do this, always pick this starter and always do everything in this order and use this specific Pokemon. I can play the game however I want. Oh look, a Coughing. Coughing always cracks me up. Look at that smile. Oh, by the way, Coughing is a poison type, weak to Psychic and Ground. However, Coughing also has the ability Levitate, which makes it immune to ground type moves. Though there are ways to change a Pokemon's ability or make sure they're not immune to ground types or other arena hazards. Because that's another thing that Levitate does, it makes you immune to certain arena traps or entry hazards or however you want to call them, kinda like flying types. It's also a pretty common ability, lots of Pokemon have it. And when a Pokemon has the ability Levitate, it's usually the only ability they can ever have, with the exception of Bronzor and Bronzong. Whereas most other Pokemon can usually have a variety of different abilities. Though that usually depends on the generation. I think a lot of Pokemon used to have only one ability, and then in later generations they got another possible ability. Let's see. Drowsy using Confusion, a psychic type attack with a small chance to confuse the target, like just happened right there. I have no idea if I actually already explained certain moves or abilities, or I've been recording this playthrough for like months now. I mean, you're not gonna notice because I'm just gonna upload it all in a row, but if you look at between this playthrough and the previous playthrough, which I think was Metroid, you'll see that some time has passed, and spoiler alert, we're not even halfway done with the game yet. In fact, I think after part 14 or 15 I might take a small break just so there's not too much time between playthroughs, otherwise this channel's inactive for like way too long. So yeah, that's probably what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna start uploading this playthrough after part 15 and then up until part 15. And then you might have to wait a while for the rest of the parts. But at this point I'm just rambling about nothing. But that's probably because I don't really have anything to talk about right now. I mean, look at this. It's another damn Zubat. Oh, and once again, we're not even at the worst of it yet. Part 13. I hope you like the Team Rocket music, because that is pretty much that entire video. That's something I haven't really talked about yet, is music in this game and Pokemon in general. Well, there's a reason for that. I find it hard to talk about Pokemon music. I mean, there are tracks I like, of course, but Pokemon music never really sticked out to me. There's not a lot that I find actually memorable. It's not bad, it's good, but I don't know, it was always kind of, it never stuck to me. And I know I'm gonna get crucified for saying all this, but can't really do anything about that. It may have something to do with the fact that all the Pokemon games are handheld games and I half the time play those with the sound off. But I can't really say that's it because all the Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney games, those are also handheld and I love the soundtrack of those games and always play those with the sound on. But I simply don't find the same for Pokemon music, so I just don't have a lot to say about it. When I try to think of like really memorable Pokemon tracks, the first theme that comes to mind is the Team Plasma Grunt battle music from Pokemon Black and White. As you already know, I really like the Lavender Town theme. And the only other one that really comes to mind is the Heart Gold and Soul Silver Champion battle theme. But in the end, if I have to summarize my opinion on Pokemon soundtracks, I'm sorry. Sorry, I'm just not as into it as I know a lot of other people are. But to me, it's no Mario Galaxy music, it's no Sonic music, and it's no Ace Attorney music. Perhaps put some Kingdom Hearts music on there as well. Oh look, I managed to rant my entire way through that final trailer, and now we have rescued Mr. Fuji. Well, sort of, because now he says, "You came here to rescue me? Well, thanks, but I sort of came here of my own free will. But whatever, come over to my Pokemon orphanage and have some tea or whatever, and I'll give you an item that you need to, well, progress with the game." In a few seconds, Mr. Fuji will give us the Poké Flute. If we play the Poké Flute next to a sleeping Snorlax, it will wake up and attack us, so we can either choose to fight it or run away or capture it, but either way, after we do that, it will be gone. And with that, we can pretty much wrap things up for Lavender Town. There is one other thing that's here, which is the Pokemon Name Raider. You can show him one of your Pokemon, he'll look at its nickname and go like, "Ha! That's dumb! You're dumb!" And then he will give you the option to give it a different nickname. However, this only goes for Pokemon that you have obtained yourself, so if you traded a Pokemon in some way, he won't allow you to change its nickname. Which, honestly, I've always hated with a passion, because I transfer Pokemon between games a lot, so they were always mine to begin with. But because it's not the same cartridge, I'm not allowed to give it a better nickname once I think of one. It's so annoying, because I also just really like nicknaming my Pokemon, but whatever, we're near the end of part, I forgot what part this was, part 12. And that means that next part is, next part is part 13, which is a part I've not been looking forward to, because as I've said before, it's a very long one. Long, kinda boring. Luckily I did prepare a few things to talk about, so we'll see how I fare in part 13 of Let's Play Pokemon FireRed. See you then and take care.